It's all about the youngsters at this point, and they're showing growth. It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. Today, we'll talk about the youngsters because it's all about them for the next 7. It's what we thought was a chance would happen for the season. It's now happening to close the season. 4 kids all playing younger than starting lineups in the NCAA Final Four. And we're seeing Brice Sensabaugh bounce back. Taylor Hendricks learn. Walker Kessler fly around. Keyonte George needs the ball to go in the basket. We'll talk about them plus a trends Monday as well. Jazz played well last night against Sacramento. We'll touch on that game as well. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. And we are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. And thank you to the everydayers. And this gets to something kind of interesting. For those of you that are everydayers, and I don't know for how many days you've been an everydayer, for how many years you've been an everydayer, but it was on March 31st, which was yesterday, of 2011, 13 years ago, that I did the first version of this show. I'd stopped doing my talk show. I really didn't know what the show was. If you go back and you can probably find it somewhere on YouTube. I kind of talk about, we'll talk Utes, we'll talk Cougars. I didn't really know what it was going to be. Many of you have been with us for a lot of them. I was trying to figure out this morning, like how many shows. If I really did a show every day, I would say it was 220, 250 a year. I think I've probably done close to 210 a year would be the average, maybe a little lower recently. So we're at somewhere around 2,700, 2,800 shows together. I truly hope you haven't watched all of them, or else I kind of figured out we've spent about 80,000 minutes together. But if you've listened to like a third of them, which some of you are like, yeah, I have, that's 30,000 minutes together. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Most of my hair's been as wacky as it is this morning. Most of them I've been on like 4 hours sleep, like I am this morning. But I just want to say thanks because obviously the journey's been pretty insane. Not only has Locked on Jazz continued to grow, then obviously we built the Locked on Podcast Network, and now, and you guys have been with me on that journey. And you guys have really been, you have been the one who has allowed me to try things and change the show. And we've got classic moments that some of you were around for in Google Hangouts where things went disastrously wrong. I've had more technical audio and video problems than anybody should for someone who's trying to do a podcast network, and you guys have stuck with me. So I appreciate it a great deal. And it's all evolved and grown, and now it's on video and audio, and it's on Amazon Fire TV, and it's pretty crazy. So I saw Sam Amick last night, good friend of mine, writes for The Athletic, and it was just kind of, we were reminiscing about life and where it's all gone and all that kind of. So it's a fun time. So I just want to say thank you more than anything else. 2011 is when we started, so I think this makes this our 13th anniversary. This is not some April Fool's joke. It's actually March 31st. It's actually yesterday. I just thought maybe Easter Sunday wasn't the time to do a special show. So anyway, I just want to say thanks. And it's been wild. And then you can start figuring out what you think Spotify Wrapped now gives us that number at the end of the year. You can decide what you think of the 80,000 minutes that we've done this show, and the nearly 3,000 shows. How many of them you've tuned into over 13 years. So thank you very much. And really being the radio voice of the team is a great privilege and love it. I think this is my 15th year, and I've really enjoyed every minute of that and cherish it. And hopefully you can hear that. A lot of people are walking up to me right now. It's interesting. I'm getting now really deep, and people are asking me like, oh, what's it like to call this? It's like, it's still awesome. Still got to call an NBA game last night. Like we've lost 9 in a row, and I think 20 of 23, but it's still great. Like, and I like the people and watching them develop, and And hopefully you can feel that energy still from me, and that it's still the same juice that I bring every night. I think you guys know over here to my side, I have a little sign on my door on my desk. I've told this story before that says "If at 18," and the concept of "If at 18" is that if at 18 years old you had told me I got to call the Utah Jazz Sacramento Kings game last night, I would not have been asking, well, what's their record and what's going. I would have run to the arena. At 18, I would have lived in the Bay Area, so I would have run from San Francisco there as fast as I could, and would have called a game with vigor and excitement. And I hope that I always have the same energy of when I was at 18. And so if I can do all things in life as though I did them when I was 18, that is the hope. So I hope you feel that, and I hope I'm achieving that. And then I just cannot thank you guys enough for the confidence and support that you've given us. All right. So from the Jazz standpoint, we are at Youngsterville. Like, it is 7 games left. It's going to, I don't know. It's clear we're not seeing Lowry again. I'm suspecting we're not seeing Jordan again. And I don't know about John. It doesn't, like, John's had a great season. And I don't know what the value is for him to roll out here and Meany's back in the starting lineup and Walker's coming off the bench. I'm not sure there is a value to that. So I kind of suspect that unless John really wants to go, that what we saw last night is what we see for the next 7 games. And it's interesting to watch. And I thought, obviously Brice Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks both have career high points last night. And I think that's going to probably be our biggest challenge, is not just to look at the box score of points. And then there's a lot of other things going on. So I'm sure you're not watching every game. And then you just look at the box score, and there's a lot to it. The thing that was most impressive last night was the transition defense was so good. So that, the Jazz transition defense has been pretty dreadful all season long. And there have just been a lot of plays where I asked Will finally the other night, like, why are so many guys getting behind you? And he literally said, like, guys aren't playing hard enough. Well, they played hard enough last night. They really did a fabulous job. The transition defense last night was as good as I've seen it maybe all year. Sacramento was in transition 18% of the time, which is a lot, according to Clean the Glass. And they don't do theirs fully on transition. They do it kind of estimating, which is a lot. We're still, we allowed 21% of opponents' possessions in transition, was the most in the NBA. And teams have their shortest. This is interesting. Teams play the shortest offensive possession against us of any team in the NBA, which just shows we're not showing a lot of resistance defensively. With that said, the last night, sure, they were in transition a lot, but they only averaged 0.86 points per transition. So really, really good job. And I think that's super effort. The half-court communication on defense was not great last night. There were just a bunch of times where Sacramento got an open look or a wide open shot, and Sacramento's offense last night was one of the best half-court offenses you'll see all season long. I think they're at 126, which is in the 97th percentile, according to Clean the Glass. And so, but there were just a bunch of breakdowns there. It's going to be easy for us to just, as I said, to go to the box score and decide that's how we evaluate the game. And I'm going to try to see if I can be deeper and better than that for you guys. And last night, I think the 2 really big positives from the youngsters were, number 1, that we saw a lot of transition defense, and number 2, that we saw a lot of ball movement. 23 corner threes last night means these guys really recognized what Sacramento was doing. Walker did a nice job in the mid pocket of getting the ball out to the corners. The Jazz want to take a lot of corner threes. They went 10 of 23. That's 44%. That's pretty awesome. It's 1 point, whatever points per possession. That's how you got to play it. They did not shoot the above the break 3 well. And this group does not get to the rim a great deal. They only took 18 shots at the rim. But those are the 2 things I thought were really, really good last night. You saw much better effort, much better transition 3, or much better ball movement. And then the thing that really struggled last night was half-court communication on defense. There were just a bunch of times where, like Taylor, for example, and I don't know if this was his fault, but there were just a bunch of times where Taylor was closing out really from far away and late to shooters. Keegan Murray kind of suddenly wide open at the top. Like, you can't have Keegan Murray wide open at the top. They're the 2. Last night was the matchup of the 2 worst 3-point shooting defenses in the NBA. And there is a large school of thought that is largely based on luck. And both Sacramento and Utah have been unlucky on wide open threes. But I got to say, watching both those teams last night, there's a little more than luck going on. Those were pretty wide open, easy rhythm threes for everyone last night. Above the break 3-point shooting at 50% by Sacramento feels a little unlucky. But on the other end, like when Keegan Murray's got his feet set and we're 3 miles away from him and his entire zip code is open, that's on us a little bit. And it felt like that was going on a little bit. So overall, I thought really good. We'll look at each of the individuals as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. We're just getting started. Career highs for Brice and Taylor. Ron Boone did a fabulous job on Postcast last night talking about a play where Taylor showed some awesome growth. And we'll talk a little bit about what we saw to Brice, who seems to be bouncing back from his shooting slump, and Keyonte as well. Walker was flying around well. We'll break down each of them individually as we continue next before Trends Monday wraps us up today. On the 13th anniversary, unlucky 13, maybe it's my last and final. Maybe it's all coming to an end for all we know. 13th anniversary of Locked On Jazz here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. The Chevy lineup of cars, well, it starts with the trucks, right? Because there's nothing quite like Chevy trucks. And Chevy's got the Colorado and it's got the Silverado, and those two are just awesome. The Colorado's the zippier, smaller truck. The Silverado's the King Poobah. It's got you sitting there feeling like you're bigger than the world, up above all others, and riding in a lazy boy chair, just feeling great. The SUV lineup is pretty strong as well. The Blazer EV is out. The LT all-wheel drive is available for you as well. And the tracks are available for you. So go check them all out, plus the long-standing Equinox there for you. It's all in Woods Cross and in Logan. If you're going to go over there, we can give you the Locked On VIP treatment. So make sure you email me first at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. And remember, it is truck season right now. So all sorts of great deals for well-qualified buyers, including 0.9 APR. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the daily, #1 daily fantasy sports game. Prize Picks, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. That's right, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, and you get your match up to $100. You just pick more or less than for 2 or more players, and the winnings start to roll in. March is over, but the biggest moments in college basketball tip off in the month of April. So be a part of the action. Prize Picks for both men and women's college basketball exists. Tonight's a big one with Iowa and LSU and USC and UConn. They're going to set all sorts of ratings records, at least I hope. Get in on the playoff action with up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level. So get it all done at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the #1 fantasy sports app. prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA for first deposit match up to $100. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. And if you're sitting there on your television and you've got ESPN or Fox in the background, it is time to make the switch to the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream on YouTube or on Amazon Fire. That's right. You get the local experts covering the biggest stories from the people who really know what's going on in the league. When you've got the NCAA tournament like this, and don't go to the national people yelling and screaming and making you have to turn down the volume. Go to the Locked On Sports local experts who bring you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube as well as free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's Locked On Sports Today. It's part of the Locked On Sports, Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So last night was super cool for Brice Sensabaugh because 1, it's a career high. 2, it's a confidence builder. And 3, he's busting out of what was a miserable slump. And not surprised. Brice was a 40% three-point shooter in college. Brice has a track record of the ball going in. And that means that when, we're sitting here talking about whether Brice is going to go, there was, you certainly begin to wonder, like, okay, is there something about it takes so much more time to get a shot off? It's so much faster. Everything about it's more difficult. And frankly, you look at, I watch those college games right now, and these guys just take a year to get their shot off, and they have it. And you watch in college, and you better have your feet you watch in the pros, you better have your feet exactly right, your hands exactly right, the pass better be on the mark, and you better nail it. And Brice went 5 of 10 from 3 last night. He went just 1 of 4 on 2s. I'm actually surprised a little. He's having a harder time getting to some of his spots than he wants to in college, in pros. You just can't bully your way there, so he's going to have to figure that out. But back in the starting lineup, and last night he had 22, 4, 3, 2 steals. I thought his passing was really, really good last night. And and you just and 6 free throws. You just saw a lot of what he is going to possibly be able to do. Obviously, now you got to link it. Sacramento's not a very good defensive team. Sacramento leaves the corner 3 wide open. We took advantage of that. Houston is a good physical defensive team that made him go 0 for 8 and 0 for 7 and busted his rhythm. So I think it'll be, it's worth watching, but it's also nice to see him. I mean, he had that stretch 0 for 3, 0 for 2, 0 for 4, 0 for 5, and then he hit 1, and then he missed 3, and then he missed 4. I mean, he scuffled. He was, I think, what was it, one of about 30 or so there for a stretch, came out of it with a 2 of 10, and now has, had the 0 for 7 the other day. Last 4 games is kind of stabilizing himself a little bit, shooting 33% on both 3s and 2s. But nice to see. So obviously long way to go for Brice, but that's a confidence builder. He's been working hard for it. It was interesting, and I talked about this on Postcast last night. Will Hardy kind of let on that they are working on his footwork. And wow, that's hard, like to be working on things and then to put it together. But I also thought just the ball movement, the ball passing were things that look good. Taylor had his career high as well last night. The 9th pick of the draft had his 18 points. First time he's been in double digits in a while. He went 4 of 6 from 3. My only thing on Taylor right now, and I don't know if this is a fair thing to say, I just wish I felt him more. I feel like you see his length and his ability, and occasionally blocks a shot. And I don't. The other day he had a pull-up jumper at the free throw line, I don't know exactly what I'm saying, honestly, or what I'm asking him to do. And maybe it's impossible where he is right now, but it feels like there's periods of the game where I don't notice that he's out there. And I just wish I felt him more. I'll have to ask Ron about that. Ron always has, I kind of say that to Ron, and then Ron will make sense out of what I mean by that. I just feel like in the recent games, there's been a little less feel from him than I've had in the past. That was his 16th start of the year. So he's now kind of started 16 games. He's shooting 46% from the field. His 3-point shooting's now up to 36%, which gets to be about league average and pretty good. He's 9 points, 7 rebounds, an assist and a block. We're seeing it kind of come together in 27 minutes. And he's super young, and it's going to take some time. And we look at Jonathan Kuminga and Jaden McDaniels and Jalen Johnson and other comps. It took all of them 2 or 3 years. I mean, this is the one thing that I think is super hard for this whole build and for the fan base and for the front office is, and we'll talk about this a lot. I'll do deeper research on this, but like you start to look at these kind of non-top 5 wing players that come in the league. It takes probably their 3rd year until they're pretty good. And then on point guards, I've talked about this a lot, and I'll do the research for everyone a little bit more detailed. I did it at some point this year, kind of with a little less detail. It seems to take about 5,000 pick and rolls before a guard becomes more efficient than 1.0 points per pick and roll possession. And that's the benchmark to me, that 1.1. If you look at, I think that gets you to be about a top 15 or top 20 point guard in the pick and roll. I'll look right now and have that for you. That's the benchmark of where, okay, now you're a viable pick and roll guard. Like Keyonte, obviously right now we wouldn't expect him to be anywhere near. If you go to the top 90 pick and roll guards in the NBA, so those guards that have run 500 pick and rolls this year, and that's pretty low on the list. The guys that are 1.0 or better are basically the 43 of them. So that's, the top half, literally 50%. That's kind of the benchmark of 1.0 gets you to the upper half. It takes about 5,000 pick and rolls to get there. And frankly, a bunch of guys who are really good, Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, DeJounte Murray, are not there this year. But when you start to drop in under, 0.95, you're dealing with Jalen Green, you're dealing with Cade Cunningham, you're dealing with Jaden Ivey, Scoot Henderson, Paulo Banchero. Keyonte George is 86th out of 91 in efficiency. Denny Advada, Brandon Miller's last. Well, that's what happens, and it takes 5,000 pick and rolls before you kind of move over that rate. Who are the guys above it? Tyrese Halliburton, Derek White, Paul George, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Williams in Oklahoma City is defying things. Drew Holiday. I'll bet you if we go look at Drew Holiday year by year. Dame Lillard. These are all vets. These guys are all well over 5,000. Shea, Devin Booker, Giannis, Trae Young went over 5,000 in his first 2 years. Chris Middleton, James Harden. Colin Sexton is actually following the 5,000 rule to perfection. He crossed over 5,000 going into this year and is now 1.05, 20th best pick and roll guard out of 90. Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant. You just don't see young players. Jaylen Brown, CJ McCollum, Scotty Barnes is in there. Okay, so there's a young player. We'd have to go back and look and see what his number is in year 3. And whether he's running. Anthony Edwards is now into this. I'll bet you if we look at Anthony Edwards, he went over 5,000 sometime recently. LeBron, Jamal Murray. Like, these are not Kyrie Irving, Michael Conley. Like, these are the guys, Jalen Brunson, who run pick and rolls time and time again and get there. And so, and on Taylor, I think it's the same thing. It's going to take 3 years. It's going to take Keyonte. If Keyonte gets 1,500 pick and rolls this year, 2,000 next year, and 2,000 the year after that, then we're right on 5,000 as he emerges into year 4 as a pick and roll guard in the NBA. So this is what's so difficult about this process. For everyone involved here is trying to figure out, like, how you projecting them, where they're going to be and when. And frankly, it's not going to be for a little while with them. It's where, we'll go through this summer. We're going to go through every model and we're going to look at what team's done. And we're going to look at all these teams and kind of break them into different classifications. And I think what we're going to see is draft and pivot is the right model. You draft for a few years and then you pivot. And that I think is the best rebuild model. You can just draft like Orlando did. And I think you end up nowhere. And we're going to go back through every kind of remodel over the years and look at them and put them all in classifications. And by the time we're done, we're going to have them all into these different groupings and classify them as different. And there's obviously going to be some gray area, and we'll see what we think is best. And hopefully our front office then listens to Locked On Jazz and follows through on all that. Probably not. Not that they're not going to follow through on the right thing to do. Probably they don't listen to Locked On Jazz was my point on that. All right. I thought Walker really flew around last night. We'll touch on that. And I think there's an interesting kind of progression that we're just talking about there. We'll stay on the same theme, and then we'll look at Trends Monday as well here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Fire TV. Fire TV is cool. Have it on right now. Fire TV is your destination for sports live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experience with smart TVs as well as the Fire TV stick. You can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live TV, whether it's opening week in a baseball, college basketball tournament. You're going to want to have Fire TV. I've got it on right now. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver constant supply of the latest videos for your favorite sports brands for free. That includes all of us at Locked On. Locked On Sports Today is available on Fire TV. A bunch of our shows are available on demand as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more. You get the local experts of Locked On and Locked On Sports Today. So go check it out. Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. Learn more. Go to Amazon.com/LockedOn Fire TV. That's Amazon.com/LockedOn Fire TV. I was actually going to lockedon.com/Fire TV because I want to see what it looked like. Oh, that's kind of cool. It tells you where to get all your devices, sets you up. So yeah, go to lockedon.com/Fire TV. All right. I thought, like to this development thing, that's the 7th time that Walker's played Sabonis. Sabonis is the most physical, difficult, mental battle there is in the NBA for a center. Obviously, Jokic is the best, but that's a different battle. And I thought Walker came with a lot of energy, a lot of juice, hit him first, didn't get dominated by him, and played him really, really well. Walker was flying around last night. And I think to the development thing, you're watching him play him a 7th time. And Sabonis has had some monster games against the Utah Jazz and some monster games against Walker. But I thought last night we saw Walker actually bother Sabonis. And I think we saw that once or twice last year too, was my memory. And then when I tried to go find it, I couldn't really find that to be the case. And so, you look at it, and The data last year was that Sabonis really kind of beat up on Walker. I think I had it during the broadcast last night when he shot against him. It was, he was pretty dominant. But he's also Domantas Sabonis. He's one of the most dominant players physically down low, and this is part of the process. I thought Walker just really had a very, very good game last night. The matchup numbers by the end of the night, when Sabonis was on offense and Walker was the defensive player, was not, as like, I don't think it revealed like that he killed him or anything, but he only went 4 of 9. And I believe he was about 17 of 24 last year against Walker. So that's a big growth right there from Walker. Sabonis got 5 assists while guarded by Walker, which is a sign of Sabonis, but also it's like, okay, Walker, who guarded him 71% of the time last night, suddenly was deciding like, oh, actually, if he's around, I'm not going to deal with it. He, in the limited time against Yerksaven, he really had his day. Yerksaven had a really tough night last night. And so I just thought that was kind of a cool step. Like these are the kind of things that we're watching and looking at. And you see Walker had, I thought, as good a night as he's had in a while, in regards to having, physically being prepared, coming with a mindset, being ready to go. Maybe it was the fact that he started as well to get that done. The other one I thought was interesting is De'Aaron Fox did not shoot very well last night when Keyonte George was guarding him. I don't think of Keyonte as a defensive player, but he might have gotten into Fox a little bit last night because Fox did not have that good a game against Keyonte, and I would have thought that could have been a really bad matchup for Keyonte last night. All right, let's do Trends Monday. God, the standings and everything are just kind of crazy. It's actually just so awesome right now. Let's see. The Denver Nuggets, they took a win away from the Nuggets, or they give a win to the Thunder. So Oklahoma City is now 1, Thunder are 2, and Minnesota's 3. Clippers are kind of set at 4. So it'll be interesting to see if they play everyone against us as we get late in the season. Then Dallas is now ahead of New Orleans for 5 and 6. That is now clear. It's probably the Dallas and New Orleans are going to be fine. And now Sacramento, Phoenix, Lakers, and the Warriors are playing for positioning in the play. In Sacramento, it's bad. One, they could very well be in the play and playing on the road. 2 is if they actually don't make the playoffs, they get their draft pick back from Atlanta, and they don't want it because they need to get off of it so they can trade future picks. So they need to make the playoffs. Even just making the 8th spot would be of great value to Sacramento for the roster building that they want to do. We head down the stretch. Everyone's got to really be playing hard right now, and you can tell that because the best teams in the league right now, net rating over the last 10 games, Boston, who doesn't need to be playing well, Dallas, the Knicks, Houston, Orlando, and Denver, Minnesota right behind, even without Cat. Teams are really struggling right now. Toronto, Charlotte, Portland, Minnesota, Detroit, and then the Jazz are 25th. And Washington, there's just a big tier. Cleveland, who comes into our next game, is actually -5 over their last 10 games, 23rd in the league. Best offenses over the last 10 are Boston, Houston, Clippers, New York, Atlanta, and Indiana. Teams that can't score right now are Detroit, Toronto, Portland, Memphis, Washington, and Charlotte. This is going to be obvious each time we mention this. The best defenses in the NBA right now, Miami is clicked in, then Orlando, then Dallas, then New York, then Minnesota, then Sacramento. So Mike Brown's got his team playing defense. Worst defenses in the last 10 games, it's not us anymore. It's Toronto and Charlotte, then us. The Clippers, that should open your eyes. Portland, Atlanta, and Memphis over the last 10 games there. All right, over the trends, the recent trends of teams, and this is the last 2 weeks, which is a little bit more recent, and sometimes tells a different story. The point differential number 1 team in the NBA is Dallas, who's 6-0 in that stretch. Orlando, Houston, New York, Miami, and Boston. So Dallas is not in there, Dallas is in there. Excuse me. Who's not in there? That was Houston's 3rd. So Dallas, Orlando, Houston, New York, Miami, and Boston. The Lakers are next, by the way, worth noting. The number 1 or the worst teams in the last games are Toronto, Charlotte, Detroit, Portland, and Memphis. We're getting ourselves out of that group. The teams that are playing the best offense over the last 2 weeks: New York, then Boston, Houston, Clippers, Atlanta, and Indiana. Interesting, Atlanta's a top 5 offense without Trae Young. Quinn Snyder knows how to coach offense. Detroit, Memphis, Portland, Toronto, Washington, San Antonio can't score right now. Top defenses in the last 2 weeks: Orlando, Miami again, Dallas, New Orleans, Minnesota, and the Lakers. Defense is not defending. Charlotte, Toronto, Portland, Utah, we're at 27th now. Clippers again, and Atlanta. So really interesting to see there. And obviously the teams are the worst in the NBA right now. Memphis, Portland, Detroit, Charlotte, and Toronto. And the teams that are best, we just mentioned, Dallas, Houston, Orlando, New York, and Miami. Thank you very much for 13 years of doing this stuff. It is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. And now we send you to the first ever 24/7 national sports channel, Locked on Sports Today. It's also available for you on Amazon Fire TV. Make the switch to Locked on Sports Today.